I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Viking Performance double adjustable shock compared to the factory shock for the 6th gen Camaros. I have a lot of customers out there running really fast on the 6th gen platform with minimal suspension mods with this shock right here. There's some pros and cons, but I'm going to go over the differences and why these work so well and give you some tips for the install. So let's start down here. So this is your compression and your rebound knob. The 6th gen Camaro tends to squat a little bit, so you're going to control the hit to the tire with the compression, and then everything that goes down and drag racing must come up, and if it goes up it comes down, right? So this is going to control after the launch. So this is going to control the hit to the tire. This is going to control that nice smooth transition from squat to static going down track. The factory uses basically a bonded rubber bushing. It is not too hard to deflect it. Well, I don't have this mounted up, but I mean, if it was in my vise, I could flex it a lot. This is I believe around a 90 durometer poly bushing. It's hard to move. I'm working on a bearing upgrade for these. I'm probably about halfway through. Hope to have that out later this year. But anyways, not to get distracted too much, I want to make this quick. This is your adjustment. This is a double adjustable twin tube design. This is a 6th gen Camaro stock shock. I took it apart so you guys could kind of see. This is not the MR or the Magna-Ride. This is the traditional style. It is a high pressure gas shock, so when you compress it, it comes right back up. These Viking models do not do that. Let's move down here. So the key thing, in my opinion, for you guys is this. The Viking shock is about a 7-inch. It's a little over 7 inches of stroke. Okay. The factory, I think, is a little over 6 inches. You also have a little bit of stuff taken up here, but we'll measure it. Okay, so 6 1/8. So your 7/8, let's call it almost an inch more of compression travel availability here. As you can see, you have that much more. This is really important because this is the extended, and these are fully extended. So when you lower the car down after you put this on, it's going to compress, you know, let's say to here. So you're only going to have this much before you hit the bump stop. So the reason that I want to point this out is because just from the very start, this is how much more stroke you have. You have 7 inches versus technically from here to here, because once you start hitting this bump stop when you launch your car, it unsettles the chassis. It shocks the chassis. You want a nice smooth launch. So that's why I like these Vikings, because here's what you can do. When you're swapping these shocks over, you take this bump stop off, and then what you're going to do is you're going to trim it down to match that height. So basically, you're going to trim this down to make it 1 inch. And what you want to do is you want to keep the bottom, because of the progressive, the way it's shaped like this is, if you had this hinge here and you hit it, it's more abrupt, it's not as progressive, it's not as soft. So you always want to keep the bottom tapered part of a bump stop, because usually it's hollow too, so it's more progressive, so it's not as stiff. So basically, here's what you're going to do. You're going to measure 1 inch. So about halfway through this tier right here, you're going to cut it with a razor. Once you know, take it off, cut it with a razor, and then pop that. Take this little C-clip off if you want, and then put that much right there on here, and then basically you're going to have a bump stop on here that equals the solid state of the stock shock. So you're going to have a lot going for you there. You want to keep the bump stop just so you don't bottom out and damage the shock. It's pretty important across the board on most applications. But I really wanted to show you guys the difference right here, because this is where the magic happens. So I'll give you a good example. A 6th gen guy will hit me up after putting a BMR spring, or I don't know, some guys talk about these P50 Elemento P ZYX ABC springs. Anyways, they drop the car down. So the more you drop the car, the less travel you have when you launch your car, right? So this is all taken up once you lower your car. So the BMR, the LMNOP, the Pedders, all the brands out there, White Line or whatever, on a stock one, you're going to be like right down here. So you're almost, in some applications, you actually may be riding on the bump stop while you're driving your car. So you're definitely going to be on the bump stop when you launch, and it squats 1.5 inches, okay? You're going to hit the bump stop, and it's very hard to maintain and achieve and maintain traction. So that's a huge difference here, is that Viking gives you that extra. And then also on a lowered car, so, you know, on a lowered application, take this off. So look what you have right here. So let's say you lower your car 1 inch. Well, now that you've lowered your car 1 inch, you're making up this difference. So it would almost be like you're coming back to us. You see that difference there? So when you lower the car 1 inch, these things have some crazy compression on my valve setup. Okay. So, yeah, I went a little far. When you lower the car 1 inch, now you have the same travel as a stock shock. So that's even cooler. That allows you to do a set of BMR springs or whatever spring you want to use, and then bam, now you have the same travel as the stock shock. I want to go over a few other things really quick. So the Viking shock is going to come like this. It's going to come with a spec sheet and everything, but I sell my own valved version that Viking does for me. So my settings are a little bit different. So when you buy from me, you're going to work with me when you go to the track and everything, which this sheet is a pretty decent start if you follow. Viking over the years has really gone out of their way to make it easy for the consumer to use their product and have good luck with it. I want to go over this stock mount real quick. It's a piece of cast aluminum. It has a rubber infused bushing or a bonded sleeve right here. The way this mounts to the factory is you have your bump stop, and then you have your dust boot. Now, the very important here, this is metal, okay? You need to keep this. Even if you want to cut it right here, you need to keep this, and I'll show you why. So a lot of people, when they do the Vikings or if they do a shock upgrade, they get rid of this for simplicity. Here's the bottom side that mounts to, okay, so yeah, you can tighten it. It's okay to not use that dust boot, but when you go to a high force shock like this, I'll go ahead and put it on there. So basically you're going to be like this, okay? That's what a lot of people do. They discard this stuff. Well, here's the problem. When you mount it like that, look how soft that rubber is, okay? You need to support this rubber when you squat the car, because it's trying to push the rubber out, okay? So if all you have is that stress point being this small diameter, it's trying to push that whole aluminum sleeve out of that rubber up through the top. That's not good. That's not good at all. This acts as a compression and a limiter to spread the force out through the whole piece. So it puts all of the force on this, yes, but it also distributes it throughout these limiters right here. So it puts a wider force on this whole piece instead of putting all the force at the center of this hole, like that. So when you do these modifications, you do want to, take your bump stop, trim it, make it 1 inch tall, put it on here, and then you're going to put the dust boot over the top of this. Then the mount, just like stock, then the nut. Oh, this is the Viking. It takes a different lock nut. Do not use an impact. Use a little crescent wrench like this. Use the brand Crescent if you're like I am. And then tighten that. Take another wrench. and then hand tight, snug it, and you're good. Put the shock on the car. So that's what I wanted to go over. I'd say half of my customers hit me up asking me about, do I retain the dust boot because it weighs weight, whatever, it's complicated, it's ugly, whatever. Well, the important part to know is if you don't want to keep this, which I always suggest keeping them to keep this clean, at least cut it here or find a washer, fender washer or something, okay, that matches. But you want to distribute the load on that whole piece. You don't want to pinpoint it right here. So that's it. The only other thing I was going to explain is a lot of people, this goes up here, by the way, on the top side. It goes like this. The beveled, the indentation side goes down to that, and then you put the nut up here. So I want to go over like valving stuff real quick. So now that we've shown you the difference between the stock one and the Viking model, a lot of people hit me up and say, hey, why should I buy from you, this, that, and the other. I've noticed in the GM world, it's actually hard to find good information on this stuff. Even on the F-bodies, I have F-body no prep racers come to me for parts, and 9 times out of 10, I got these 1,000 horsepower cars that come to me with some junk stuff, and whether it's some basic QA1 stuff or some basic strange stuff or even just a Warrior, and that's where I'm going. I don't whittle these up right here in my little workstation, my shock table I call it, but I know this product and I know suspension very well, so that enables me to set each customer up with what they actually need instead of, you can get, I don't know off the top of my head, but there's probably 35 to 50 different part numbers for a 6th-gen Camaro for a shock. Where I'm going with this is sometimes I try to compare what I'm doing to what other people are doing, and in the GM world it's crazy. It's like everybody has the same shock, everybody has the Warriors, the basic setup, like coilovers, the rear shocks. On this, the basic part number for the Crusader valved, which is the strongest, that's my my Kelltrac Spec shock. The strongest valving is the Crusader, but when you go online, like, you have a hard time finding any information on the Crusader. Here's the thing. There's a bunch of different Crusader valvings, so the consumer has no idea. They have a basic chart that says drag racing, road racing, this, that, and the other, but I'll be transparent. I've kind of gone a little bit different on my approaches on a lot of these, and I have a whole different outlook on how I feel that a car should act, like an independent rear suspension car, for example. There's a few things that I have people do that are a little bit different and unorthodox, and it works. So I just wanted to go over that with you. The product that I sell is not really something that you just go online and you click add to cart. It is very specific to my business and what I do, and if you call Viking, they'll tell you the same thing. They're gonna, if you call and say, hey, I want the shock that Kelly Aiken uses, they're probably going to say, well, you need to tell us, what the valving on that shock is and why you want it, because a random person isn't just going to know why I choose the style of valving that I do on these. But anyways, thank you for watching. I wanted to show you guys this. I'm getting a lot of interest in the 6th-gen Camaro stuff. I've reached out to Viking numerous occasions recently about the front coilover setup. We're really excited about that. There's been some difficulty on the strut mounts on the extrusions, but we are hard at work to try to bring that to market. I don't know who else Viking works with on stuff like this, but I've been working with those guys for a long time, and I wouldn't have it any other way. They're awesome to work with. They have the highest quality products, and I assume once we get this 6th-gen kit out there, it's going to be really, really popular. I've got like 10 guys that are just chomping at the bit waiting on it. So have a good evening, enjoy, and if you guys have any questions, hit me up. You can go to kelltrac.com. or you can go to the Facebook page, and I'm always answering messages through social media. That's pretty much where I do all my work. Take it easy.